Ladies and gentlemen, my speeches normally don't be the ones that, talk about the grand stuff. I can do that, but I don't want to bore you. But I would like to say before I go into the presentation that I welcome the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry to any signing of an MOU that will serve both nations with the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce. I welcome that. I would also like to say to the Minister, I would like you to give our regards to Prime Minister Mia Mottley, who is a friend of the private sector of Guyana. She is also a friend of some of the leaders of the private sector in Guyana. And I do, on behalf of the private sector in Guyana, extend an invitation. Whenever she feels free to visit, we will welcome her, and if she wants to greet our private sector in response, we will make that arrangement, happily make that arrangement. Right, Minister? So if you can convey that to your Prime Minister, we will be very happy for that. In Guyana, I'm going to just go through quickly the structure of the Chamber of Commerce and the Private Sector Commission of Guyana, which is something similar that you have in Barbados here. So let's go quickly. So the Chamber of Commerce is the oldest BSO in Guyana. It's been there since 1889, and I saw your chamber has been here 1825. So yours is the first, and then we are second. So I believe when the founders of these chambers of commerce were getting together, it might have been under a mango tree or something. That is so long ago. Look where you are now. So we have about 250 members in our chamber, which represent from all walks of life. I'm just go through that. But our Chamber of Commerce is backed by an act of parliament, so we have legislative mandate to carry out our work. That is me with a broken arm there. That's the last election. There's the morning. There's the executive of the chamber. There is Nicholas Boyer, there are two bald-headed guys, both of them are the vice presidents of the chamber. They have the Vin Diesel kind of look going on. Nicholas Boyer, Timothy Tucker to my right. The lady in the middle is the treasurer, her name is Shanti Prasad, and the gentleman to the extreme left of me is Mr. Kester Hudson, who is the secretary, and that is the executive. That executive is born out of a 21-member council. So we have 21 councillors that are normally elected every year. No president can serve more than 2 years. So we have some democracy going on there at the chamber. I don't know if you can see this. It's a busy graph. It's a busy chart. But what it says is this, all of the different areas in which we represent. And it's from womb to tomb. It's everything under the sun in Guyana the Chamber of Commerce represents. From oil and gas to distribution to energy, education, construction, you name it. I would reckon it's the same thing in Barbados too with the Chamber of Commerce here, right? So once we understand that, so this is a breakdown of the membership, the 250 from the various sectors and subsectors in Guyana. So really when we speak for everyone. The membership is made up of different size of companies too, from large to small. So we have large companies, 25% of the membership, medium-sized companies, 35, and then the small, 21. And then we have what we call the micro MSME, micro, small, medium, and micro enterprises. So, and then we have some non-resident companies too. Companies from the Caribbean would normally come, and they would register with us. And nowadays, you find a lot of companies from Canada, companies from the UK and the US also are coming as we call non-resident members. They're not voting members, but they're part of the chamber too. That doesn't matter too much. Over the past 2 years, we have had a large increase of membership. Actually, I think that when I took over the chamber, it had about 173 companies in 2017, and it's 250 now. So we had like about 80 new companies on board in the past 2 years. And I guess that's because of what's going on in Guyana. So just like Barbados, our chamber and the many chambers and the many subsector bodies, they sit on what we call a commission in Guyana, a private sector commission. I'm also the vice chairman of the private sector commission in Guyana. The commission started in 1992 by the Manufacturers Association, us as the Chamber of Commerce, something called KG, which is a consultative association of Guyanese enterprises, the Burmese Chamber of Commerce, and the Forest Producers Association. Those five form the private sector commission. Today, they have 21 subsector bodies, or we call sectoral bodies, and we have about 30 of the largest businesses in Guyana that make up the private sector commission. They deal with the large cross-cutting issues in Guyana. I'll just go through this quickly before I go. So the private sector commission deals with the broad stuff, like what the minister was talking about, and all these national developmental issues and so on. They deal with everything above the line to set the, what you call the enabling environment, if we ever to achieve that in business. But these are some of the strategies that they have worked on over the past years with government and other states. So right now, well, last year we had the Guyana Business Summit, which I spearheaded in Guyana as part of the Private Sector Commission, which brought government and the opposition and the whole civil society together to farm out strategies for taking the country forward. The current government in Guyana have what we call a Green State Development Strategy, but it's still in draft form. Okay, so this is the boring stuff. So now let me get into the real brass tacks stuff. My tone of voice is going to change too, right? So let's look at Guyana's economy. So the economy over the past number of years, since 1966 to now, it's been mostly resource-led development. Rice, sugar, bauxite, and those things. You know, agriculture and so on, sugar cane, that is what we have. Fisheries was one. We had the timber industry as well, which is forest products. That was another one. Gold and diamond also is a major sector for us in Guyana too, because we have a lot of mining in Guyana. Actually, mining fetched the economy in years 2008 to 12, 13, but still continue to add significant amount of resources to the economy in Guyana. So apart from the normal traditional sectors, we now have oil and gas, which is the reason why the microscope started to turn to Guyana because of that developing industry. So we'll go through that in a little more detail. The economic growth is around 4% on average, taken from 2009 to 2018, started to dip and go back up. Economies are normally resilient to some things, but you know, from time to time, the economy do go up and it do go down. And that is normal. Once the structure doesn't change in the economy, everything should be fine. So those are just some basic things. Now, this is just to say that government spending versus private sector spending. As you can see, private sector spending is normally 65 to 70%. So that tells you what the country is about. When a government is spending more than the private sector, you have trouble. Because government funds tend to take longer to get into private sector hands. By the time the money comes in from the taxation authority, goes into this treasury, then goes to parliament, then gets an appropriation fund, then disburse, then mobilization payment, then second mobilization payment. You see the velocity of the money start to slow down right away. So that, once you see government spending less to some extent in an economy, you understand what happens. When private sector spend, the boss man calls somebody and says, let's invest over here tomorrow. Story is finished. Things gone. And that is what you want. You want private sector spending. So in Guyana, that is what you're looking at, right? And that is over a number of years, from 2006 straight up to 2017. It's consistently in the same area. So that's just trend analysis. So let's talk about how you can get set up in Guyana, what you can do, what are some of the things that are there, barriers, what are some of the things that are open up. So let me just go down to some of the things that you need to consider. But before I go into this, I would just like to say something I was saying to the minister before we started. If one is to call a meeting to meet somebody, a leadership person in Guyana, in the government or private sector, say in Trinidad, or say in Houston, Texas, or say maybe in Newfoundland, or maybe Aberdeen, the room would be full. They'd have to stop registration. That is the amount of interest Guyana is being receiving. That is the amount of interest people have in Guyana. So as private sector, you're all captains of industry here. You're all leaders of your companies. But I was saying to her, and I'll say to you, that when you're fighting fires, that problem of always stepping back and looking at the whole forest is normally be the issue. So how do you grow? Like I just had up Guyana. I just had up Guyana's growth. Couple slides back. Look at that. Look at that. 4%. If some companies in here grow 4%, the CEO will get fired. Because 4% organic growth is not enough. So if you're dependent on organic growth as a company, as an enterprise level, it might cause some problem for sustainability issues. Because wages grow above 4% in some places. Inflation grow above 4% in some places. So if your organization is growing at that rate, 3-4%, you can't survive. What I'm saying here is that just like countries, how do you grow faster? You go faster by new investment, by addition of debt into your capital base, or you grow if you have new markets. So Guyana is a new market. And for companies as yourselves, if you fight fires with your own business right now and you don't have the capacity to expand, you might not start to look at how you're going to expand. Start with just getting an officer to look at Guyana. Look at Guyana, look at the structure and where they have the gaps. So, as I was saying, you have some competence in Barbados. Guyana have some weaknesses in certain areas. How can you fill that gap quickly? And that is where the opportunity is. I'll go through some of them, some concrete steps, as the minister said just now, in a short while. Now, these are some of the laws that they have in Guyana, but don't let it frighten you. Every country have them, right? But if you're going to start up a business, there's a Business Registration Act. So if you want to just register your business, just get a law firm and you get your TIN number with the Guyana Revenue Authority. It's not hard to get. And then you register your business with a court. Either you register it as a sole proprietary, a partnership, or you go to the court, and maybe 2 to 3 weeks you can get a corporation registered, a limited liability company registered. And that is a start. You can find a partner in Guyana, or you can go it alone. However you choose to go and navigate is fine. I would recommend finding a good partner that is in similar business, that you can trust, that is, that is somebody that you don't have to keep going in the cabinet to see the agreement, what is the agreement about. They say once you have a partnership, you got to go and check the cabinet to find the verbiage of the agreement, you lost the partnership. Because you need to trust each other. So I'm saying if you come into Guyana, a good start would be the chamber-to-chamber relationship. Our members are what we say, tested members. They're true past members. And members of the Barbados Chamber, I'm sure you guys are too. So my thing would be not to go start business with somebody under a street light, but try to find somebody that is good in business and who has been established. And that is a good start. So you set up. But there's a whole set of other taxation laws, like the Companies Act, they have the capital gains, you got the Consumer Fair Trading Act, Copyrights Act. You have a whole lot of them there, right? Deeds Registry Act. Then you have the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act, that's the government side. You have Holidays and Pay Act, that's to deal with workers. These are just some laws that you have. So all this is saying is Guyana is not a lawless place. They have laws. And just like here in Barbados, you have similar laws. You have to get your lawyers if you want to start up a big business. But if you're now getting started and put up a footprint there, fine. For like a company like Massy and others who already have a sizable presence in Guyana, they would have been aware of all of these, right? Let me just move on from that. So they have some more here that deals with partnerships and deal with patents and so on. We also have a Petroleum Act and an Exploration Act too. We have Discrimination Act. We have the Guyana Authority Amendment Act, the Revenue Authority Amendment Act. Securities Industry Act, we have the Financial Institutions Act that deals with the banks and insurance companies and so. So they have laws that govern each sector of operation that will guide business activities. The tax structure, this is the tax structure right now. For commercial activities is 40%, non-commercial activities 27.5%, and for telecommunication companies 45%. And there's a definition for commercial activity there. Once you carry on the trading in goods not manufactured by it or includes an activity of or a commission agency. So they define what is a commercial activity and what is not a commercial activity falls in the upper bracket. So the rate is 27.5%. So I think in the recent budget there was a drop to 25%. So the tax structure is simple. If you're going to go into Guyana as a non-resident, you have 183 days in which you are deemed a non-resident. After that, you have to pay your taxes. For the purpose of income taxes, once you're earning income in Guyana as an employee, you have to pay as you earn. As any other country, you have to pay your NIS, which is a National Insurance Schemes contribution, and so if you're working in Guyana. So that is in the Tax Act. There's something called a 2% turnover tax if you're making losses or continuous losses. This is the individual tax bracket, how you pay people, 28% up to 1.4 million. But don't let the 1.4 million, get your head turned up. Our exchange rate right now, the official one is 208 Guyanese to $1 US. So our exchange rate is kind of little, there's a wide spread there. So don't let that get you too riled up. What I have in Guyana, which is a broad-based act, is the Value-Added Tax Act. So the Value-Added Tax Act deals with all activities really. Is itemized tax, is a consumer's tax, and each item is either zero rated, exempt, or standard rated. So this is for companies involved in distribution and manufacturing and so on. If you sell a service, most times it'll be standard rated. There are a small list of exempted items and a small list of zero rated items. Most of them are standard rated. There's some double taxation treaty, but these are just a broad stuff, right? I'm going to just go through some of these quickly. Withholding tax as usual is 20%, and there's tax at source. I'm just going to go over that quickly. So here's where I want to spend some time. So there's some regimes in Guyana. There's some incentive regimes. So they have some general incentives, then they have some sector incentive, and then they have some special incentives for business coming into Guyana. Right? So let's just go through some of them. So concessions, there are concessions that you can access via tax holidays and so on. For these are the particular areas in which you can go to Guyana and you can go to the Office of Investment, which is Go Invest, and you can put in, okay, I want to come in Guyana to do business. This is my business plan. Once you're in anything that have non-traditional agricultural development, like aquaculture and so on, you can get a lot of tax incentive there. Anything to do with petroleum exploration, anything to do with mineral exploration and extraction, there are tax holidays there. But look, there's one there, tourist facilities. So I was saying to the minister, and say it now, Guyana, we have maybe 2 to 3 of the big hotels. So we have the Marriott, we have the Pegasus, and then we have the Princess Ramada, which is more inland. And then you have the smaller ones. But in a country that is seeing a huge influx of foreign nationals, that is an area that Barbados have a huge strength in. I've been a strategist for many companies, and I would know that if I'm to enter into a market, I'm not going to enter a market that is matured. So if I enter in a sector that is matured, the competition will be rife. I will enter something that is weak. There's a huge gap, so I can build on that and I'll grow. So that is one of the things that clearly is an area of opportunity. Building a hotel, operating one, dealing with the hotel management, anything to do with catering, anything to do with promoting of chefs, certifying them, training and certifying them, putting them out there. We hardly have certified chefs in Guyana. And offshore, most of the people that goes on the rigs and on the supply vessels and all of them, they have to be certified. And we don't have much. I understand you have a school here that certifies chefs and so on. You have one of the best hospitality industry in the entire region. We need help in that area. From an institutional standpoint, each company, they can carve out which part they want to play in that. But if you take a plane which is an hour and a half away from here to Guyana, you will see it for yourself, that there is need for that service in Guyana. And if you know, services make up the majority of your economy too. And we intend for that to be a big part of our economy too, because everyone that comes and works offshore, they need the onshore service. There is a rule of thumb that I work with that I've picked up when I was in Newfoundland. For every one person offshore, you need 7 onshore to support them. So when you have the offshore jobs, it creates the onshore support facilities. All the support structure have to be onshore to support them. Moving on that, like textile production, there are some other areas in wind and solar energy and so on. All those you can get concessions for. All you have to do is go to Go Invest website and you can see all of that. I'll move past this. This one is a little out there. So just some general things to know, that there is no foreign exchange control in Guyana. I know some of our neighbors have problems with that. Our reserves have been reducing for various reasons, but we have a good foreign exchange market. It goes up and down, but the reserves have been going down for some time now, but it is not in a place where, you know, some of our neighbors have more problems than us when it comes to finding foreign exchange to pay bills. As you would all know, 99% of bills that you pay when you import goods is in US. And your central bank and your country, your banking system must have that kind of money to make sure the economy is moving as fast and turning over quickly. So we have unlimited carryover of tax losses if you're operating. Unlimited carryover of tax losses. You have accelerated depreciation for tax purposes for machine and equipment and so on. You have some waivers of VAT if you're eligible for it. And there are incentives for specific geographical areas. For example, if you want to invest in various aspects in terms of the hinterland side, like in Region 1, Region 7, Region 8, those are what we call the hinterland region. Region 9 is in Rupununi. Region 10 is in mainly the Linden area. There are specific incentives to go out into the outskirts if you are in that kind of, that kind of business. This is another special incentive, and that's just for information purposes. For agribusinesses, for agriculture businesses, you get waivers on duty and VAT on most, if not all, most of the equipment that you need for that, for land preparation and so on. The duty and the VAT waivers for agro-processing. So what we have is a lot of agriculture in Guyana. What we don't have is an agro-processing facility. So that is something that we can, that is a big opportunity there. We did some feasibility studies in Guyana. It's something that is a little expensive to do, but it's because of the soil that we have. If you eat a watermelon and you throw the seed in the yard, a tree grows. That is how the fertile the land is. You have all of the food, all of the fresh food in Guyana. What we don't have is a facility and a cold chain system to take it out. And once a consortium or a couple of people can get together and say, okay, we can invest in this area, that is something to look at. Right? That is a huge gap there in Guyana because everything grows there. Most stuff grow, and they grow well too. So anything to do with agriculture is something that you might want to get into. Fisheries, If you want to get into fisheries, well, there's exemption and duty on fishing vessels and spears and so on, and the equipment, and exemption from duty and VAT on the processing equipment, packaging and so on for fisheries, anything in the fishery sector. ICT, there are exemption of duties on a wide range of ICT equipment and so on, including the computer and the hardware, all the accessories, the peripheral, all of those you get exemption for. Zero rated on the computer, the accessories, the routers, anything to do with that sector, you got a lot of exemptions for. Manufacturing. One of the problems we have as manufacturers in Guyana is energy costs. Because energy is a major thing in manufacturing. But apart from that, labor is relatively cheaper than here. On other raw material are relatively cheaper. Where we are as in terms of logistics, where we are, most of the stuff come through Trinidad, then to Guyana. I would suspect it's the same thing from Trinidad to Barbados. So there is a stop in Trinidad. So logistically, when you import stuff, it tacks on one other count of freight from Trinidad to Guyana. So you got to check the number of counts that it stopped from the point that you're ordering from, say you're ordering from China, how much stops it make before it reach where you are, then you put it through a manufacturing system, and then you got to sell off to your people locally or you re-export. So you got to check the number of stops that it make and how that tacks on to your costs. But manufacturing, most things in manufacturing are exempt in terms of duty and taxes, and so manufacturing equipment, your packaging, your raw material. There are some specific ones that are on the CARICOM list of ineligibles that you don't get the exemption for unless you apply to COTED. But most of the things you use in the manufacturing in Guyana are normally, they're exempt from taxes and duty, most of them. Forestry, in Guyana is a lot of forests, and a lot of wood there to all different species of wood. Yesterday I was walking I'm staying at the Radissons, I'm walking out, and I'm looking at the wood to see if there's a wood that I can recognize, because I used to work for the Forestry Commission a couple of years ago, to see if I can recognize the wood. I wish my wife was saying that that's not Guyanese wood. But wood, I mean, we have all different species of wood. Every one that you can think about we have. So there's a big market for that. If you have a construction industry in Barbados that continues to grow and continues to be there, there's wood, there's sand, there is gravel, everything we have in Guyana. There's the gravel pits. We have the loom, everything. So if you want to build something or you want to get into the business of bringing it from Guyana by barges to Barbados, you just work out your costs, and I'm sure there will be a huge incentive regime for that kind of business. Well, here's where I believe that a lot can be done. I believe, I spoke about the hotels and so on, but there's so many tenets of tourism in terms of what we have in Guyana that you in Barbados can find a niche to operate. We have, as I said, we have a huge jungle. We have a lot of riverine communities. We have a lot of tour operators, not a lot, some tour operators, but there's a lot of tenets of tourism that we can learn from Barbados, and Barbados private sector can come to Guyana, find those partners, and see where they can expand the business, diversify it, whatever they can do, knowing you guys are the best in the region in this area. That can be transferred over to Guyana by yourselves, if you go it alone, or you find a willing partner in Guyana, you work together, and you build, right? What is for sure is that Guyana will grow, and it will grow exponentially in the next 2 decades. And I'll come to that just now. So when you're doing your strategic planning or risk analysis, do I go, do I do not go, do I invest, do I not invest? You have to take all the factors into consideration. But tourism sector is one that is, I believe that is a first area that we can work together on. So in the energy sector, anybody want to get into the energy sector, into the petroleum and so on, you get a lot of incentive here, a lot of tax exemption. There are some operators in Guyana, and they get a lot of tax exemption because it's a new industry and you want to encourage investment in the industry, so you give tax exemptions for them. Hoping that you get, you'll bring people to Guyana. And right now, a lot of people have been taking advantage of that, so we have a lot of operators in Guyana. As I'm on it, I can just let you know, we have some of the world's biggest companies in Guyana. You all know ExxonMobil is there. I'll get into that a little more. But we have Chevron is scouting the area. They applied for a block there. We have Total out of France. They have some operator rights down in Guyana into a block. They have Tullow Oil out of the UK. They have a block there with a number of partners. They have Repsol out of Spain. They have a block there as well. They have CGX. They have about 2 or 3 blocks somewhere, some close onshore, near shore they call it, and then one offshore. And all of those ports, they have Anadarko as another one, have a huge piece of waters in Guyana. And they are all there. And this year we'll have, although Exxon is continuing with their exploration, they have others are coming to drill wells. Right? So in the energy sector, there's a lot to be done there. Mining, the sector on mining, there are a lot of all mining, most if not all mining equipment is tax exempt too. You get a lot of preferential VAT treatment for fuel and so on. So, and mining equipment, the excavators and so on, normally you will get them VAT free and so on. Because that's an area that people wanted to go in, so you encourage investments by giving them some tax relief. Aviation, right now we have Bristow in Guyana, the aircraft operator. They are there to support the offshore. So if you need any crew change or any emergency, these helicopters will go and they will come back. If there's any emergency, any kind of accident offshore and so on. But they only have Bristow. There is an area there to have more of that in Guyana, right? The helicopter services. That is an area that I saw when I was in Newfoundland. There's a big business up there because you have to have it always on standby in case something goes wrong. Because if there is something offshore that happens, you have to react within 30 minutes. So this is the one they're going to spend a little time on. Everybody's been looking at that. So that's the block there. I don't know how many of you saw this map before. Could you guys just raise your hand, just let me know how much you guys saw this before? A couple. Thank you. So that is the block that Exxon owns called the Stabroek block. That block is 6.6 million acres of water offshore Guyana. So I've checked your surface area for Barbados, which is 106,500 acres. And I think Barbados can fit in that about 82 times. But I just checked it when I was sitting there. And Trinidad can fit in that about 5.2 times, 5.42 times to be exact. So you can tell the vastness of the unexplored area. So here's the thing. Those in oil and gas will tell you that normally when you have exploration going on, 1 in 10 wells is normally be the ratio of find. It's the opposite in Guyana. They have found 12 wells and 1 was unsuccessful. So it's 13 wells it had, 1 named Skipjack they didn't find. So it's the complete opposite in Guyana when it comes to exploration by Exxon. And Exxon is the only operator. See how the kite show block sticking out there in gold too? Well, Exxon is the operator for that one too, and the one at the side there. But you see the blue spots between, those are other persons that own, other companies that were just telling you, like Chevron is applied for, then you have Anadarko a little up, and then Tullow's a little bottom of the turbot. You see where you have Payara, Pacora there? just below that, there is one called the Orlanduk block that Tolo have. They're going to drill there soon. So you have 12 wells. So the Liza field, is about 1.2 to 1.4 billion barrels. And that has been developed. So Liza, they have Liza 1, Liza 2, Liza 3, and Liza 4. And then they had Liza Deep. So Liza, the Liza field, they're now developing Liza 1, which is going to be about, I think it's about 17 wells within that field. Liza 2 is going to be about 38 wells in that field. Right, and then Liza 3 might be a little, but I don't think you can go at this point above 40 wells per field. So there's massive investment in that area. Right? And that is driving a lot of work on shore, a lot of service providers on shore. So when you start to put your stuff in place in terms of when you're going to go and invest in Guyana, just think about what's going to happen out there with that. By, let's say, in the next 7-8 years, Guyana is expected to produce over 750 barrels as of today. That's the estimation as of today. But if, as you go down the road and investment decisions are made to develop the other fields, that figure may go up. So as of today, they're saying it's 750,000 barrels per day. And when I checked that, if you use $60 per barrel by 365 days, you'll end up with about 16.4 billion US per annum output, which is three times the size of our economy right now, because we're about 3.4 billion. Barbados is about 4.78 billion. So and there's just one sector, and there's just one operator. If the others find and they start to invest and develop the well and produce too, you have a whole different scene going on there. So what I'm showing you is what everybody else in the world is seeing. So if you go to Newfoundland and you go to all of the oil producing nations in the world, you go to Aberdeen, you go to Houston, they're watching the same thing. And their people are not sitting. They're coming to Guyana. They're there every day. I can tell you, most of the companies in Houston are already in Guyana. You have Noble Drilling, you have Rowan Drilling coming soon. Those are drilling companies. You have Stena Drilling from Scotland in Guyana. They're just drilling for Exxon. And those tier 1 contractors have a whole lot of subcontractors under them, which is where our business, we will normally get business from the tier 1 contractors. So everybody's looking at this. Our chamber went up to Aberdeen last year. A team from our chamber went up there to meet with Aberdeen Chamber of Commerce and Grampian Chamber of Commerce, and they tried to work out an arrangement. By January, there was a team from Aberdeen in Guyana to try to look at partnerships. Last year I was, not last year, the previous year I was up in Newfoundland, November. Went there, checked the place. When I came back, a whole lot of Canadian companies came together and they signed a lot of partnerships with Guyanese. Those partnerships are actually doing significant work in Guyana. The Americans from Houston, the Houston area and others are in Guyana. Some of them operate by themselves. Some of them find partners and they're working. So the same can be for Barbadian companies. Is that you come by yourself or you find a partner and start working. Because a lot of people say, well, it's now starting and there's a lot more to go around and it's going to grow. My thing is, you got to get the first train. Because if you don't, if minister and that gentleman is doing business and they get accustomed to each other, they work well together, develop character between each other, it's hard to break that arrangement. And nobody would not want to break that arrangement. So for new companies getting into market, it will make it difficult after a while. Because character, competence, and so is being developed whilst you're waiting to come into the market. So it's something you got to consider. So when I was in business school in the UK, my marketing teacher came into the class and said, guys, who was the first guy to walk on the moon? Everybody put up their hands. Neil Armstrong. So who's the second? Nobody knew. Who's the third? Nobody knew. Get the point? If you don't start, you don't be the first one there, nobody's going to know you. it's going to be harder for you to get into the market. And that's why I keep saying in Guyana, we need to get there and get there early. So this is a map of the area and what we have going on there. So just some of the structures in Guyana. Right now we don't have a local content policy. It's in its final stages, a policy. Our chamber was part in helping crafting that policy. We have also drafted our own local content legislation and sent it to the President of Guyana for them to look at in terms of passing it and making it into law. There is the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission that have a responsibility for monitoring the exploration in Guyana. There is the EPA that have the responsibility for issue the environmental permits to the sector. There's a new department that they set up to look at the broad policy and direction of the industry in Guyana, because it's a huge industry. It's actually going to, there are those who think it's going to become a super sector, because oil and gas normally does that to countries. When oil and gas start to take its grip on any country, it start to take over things. So there we are with local content. So what we are asking for, the last point at the bottom there, what we've been doing is encouraging partnerships. We encourage partnership because it's a fast way to learn, it's a fast way to transfer technical knowledge and know-how, and it builds local capacity. And what we saw, that most of the companies that are partnering are the ones that are getting, ahead quickly. Because, Guyana is not a place that we know about oil and gas. We got to depend on those who do know and try to work with them. We know the local business environment. We know how to navigate that. We don't know about oil and gas much. We are learning, and we're learning quickly. So when it comes to working together, the Barbadian private sector is one that is open to doing business. We in Guyana, we are open to doing business, and we want to make sure that we start working together quickly. We're going to make sure that our information is shared with every one of you through your chambers of commerce so that you can start working. That is the model I've done with the Newfoundland people. So the Canadians, we signed an MOU with the Newfoundland environmental associations. They have about 500 members there, and we share members' information. So when the Newfoundlanders come to Guyana, we welcome them, we bring our private sector to meet them, and that one-on-one relationships start to work, and people work on their own. You see, if we wait on government to do stuff, government to government will sort out their own business. But at the enterprise level, to the business level, people have to get up and get. If we don't do that, nobody's going to help us. So that's why we encourage businesses to come and meet businesses and let them talk and find their partner and work. And we will provide any assistance we can locally in Guyana to assist that. And if you have to get a good lawyer to register your company, we put you onto somebody. If you have to get office space, we put you onto somebody. If you have to get anything you need to get, there is somebody in our chamber that can assist. So that is what we try to encourage. So, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of my my presentation.